The Jeffrey Epstein scandal is back in the spotlight and bigger than ever. A bipartisan group of lawmakers are calling for transparency.
Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to name names like that? These are some of the richest, most powerful people in the world that could sue these women into poverty and homelessness. Yeah, it's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women.
That was Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican. Survivors of Epstein's abuse are speaking publicly in Washington. 10 have come forward.
And to be clear, the only motive for opposing this bill would be to conceal wrongdoing. You have a choice. Stand with the truth or with the lies that have protected predators for decades. I am no longer weak. I am no longer powerless. And I'm no longer alone.
The House Oversight Committee, they dropped tens of thousands of pages of documents, but some critics are saying most of that was already public. Are we going to see transparency and accountability in this case, or are we going to see the protection of powerful figures? Let's bring in Roshini Rajkumar, attorney, political strategist, and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Kevin. You know the saying, politics makes strange bedfellows. And when you watched that press conference yesterday and the assortment of politicians, of office holders from both parties coming together for one reason, it was actually kind of astounding in itself.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of bipartisanship on any issue, and there's been a lot of finger pointing on this one as well. But when we look back at it, we really know that the Biden administration didn't do much on this and the Trump administration didn't do much on this. So I'm glad to see the victims bonding together and strength in numbers. And I'm glad to see people from both the Republican and Democratic Party coming out and talking about doing something, but will something be done, do you think?
I really hope so. I think the pressure needs to stay on. This is a very emotional topic, but to the extent that anyone who's advocating for the release of any additional documents can stay as neutral and as objective and as by the letter of the law as possible, the more likely those documents will be released. If this petition indeed does get signed and the Congress gets to override the president's decision, I mean, I think it could be one of the biggest positive things that Trump would do if he would just say, okay, enough, let's get these out there. But for him to call it a Democratic hoax is not helping him. And people should be reminded, even if Jeffrey Epstein and Trump were friends in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean Trump was doing bad behavior with minors. So I think it doesn't help the president the longer he uses this kind of hoax language or doesn't jump on board release of all the documents.
Well, he definitely needs to clarify what in the world he's talking about, because there's no way he believes that all of these victims are not real and that they're a hoax. That's for sure. I think what he's trying to say is that the Democrats are trying to say that he is involved in it, and we've seen from the victims that have come forward, nobody ever saw Donald Trump say or do anything inappropriate. I feel like Donald Trump is trying to say that drawing him into this is the hoax, but that's not what it sounds like. He makes it sound like this whole thing is a hoax, and that's a terrible, terrible look.
Yeah, that's a terrible look. And at the end of the day, I've talked about this with some other crisis strategists. I don't know that there is an official list, but even if you can come up with names of some of the other offenders, it probably does reach into all parts of the world, very high levels of power, and the CIA functions of every country probably does not want those names released. So that's really what's going on here. And the longer the forces that are now banded together in a very legal way, it's a dramatic way, but it's also very legal, the stories of these victims should not be set aside or made to look like they didn't happen. And even if we have other people that get charged with crimes, it's still in our system of justice, which is beyond a reasonable doubt if someone is charged with a crime. So it's going to be interesting to see the next layers of this. But I would recommend to Donald Trump that he say nothing more and let this whole thing play out.
Yeah, the Department of Justice says there's no list of names of offenders. People don't really believe that, but even if it's true, there's 1,000 victims. They could create a list in no time at all. They could prepare a list. It would be easy enough to do. Maxwell could confirm it. She's cooperating, and they should move forward on this. If it's a situation like you're talking about with CIA and other countries, and all these things are, they can't go forward with charges for this reason or that reason, or politically they won't do it. They should really come out and say that and be very specific about it and say this is how it works, and then at least people would be able to start to believe it. They wouldn't be happy about it at all. Those victims would be outraged, and they should be, and the American people should be outraged by it. But I think they need to come forward on this, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to let this House Oversight Committee just say, we're going to continue on this investigation, and they'll drip a little bit out and a little bit out and a little bit out until people lose interest or something else big happens.
Exactly, and you're right. They should say something, even if it's, look, there are names. At this point, there isn't a list, but for our own United States national security, we're not going to release additional names. If you on your own find names, want to bring names forward and go to your respective state or federal jurisdictions and try to press charges, that's up to you. And you know what? That's within the right of every American citizen. They could do that. But this is really a game of optics and strategic messaging. And right now, Donald Trump is not winning that game. So either he needs to just say, okay, I'm fully just saying to my attorney general, release everything, or he should just not say anything and let it all play out, because those are very real victims. And the worst thing that could happen, Kevin, in this scenario is if Maxwell gets pardoned. That would be the worst thing ever for a lot of reasons.
Well, then you'd have nobody paying any price for all of this horrific acts that took place with Jeffrey Epstein's situation. That would just be a terrible, terrible situation. Do you think this story is now big enough that it can't go away, that the American people will demand some sort of accountability, some sort of transparency?
I do, and partly because if these victims, per their press conference yesterday, are saying we're compiling our own list, anyone that could be on that list is probably, who's still alive, is probably wondering and putting their ducks in a row, right? So there are a lot of tentacles to this. I don't think it's going to go away overnight, but as we've seen in our country, the new headline will supersede it at some point.
Yeah, and everyone's dropping these threats that these people, if they put a list together, they'll get sued by all these rich and powerful people. I hope the best lawyers in the world stand behind these victims and help them if that takes place. You can't just have money and power allow you to buy your way out of everything. It's just it's just not right. Roshini Rajkumar, attorney, political strategist, and host of the Crisis Files podcast. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Kevin.